欢迎收听西雅图中文电台2020年美国大选的特别节目。今天我们非常有幸的邀请到，美国华盛顿州，众议员的候选人第10选区候选人比尔，Bruch。Good evening, audience, listeners. Welcome to Chinese Radio Seattle 2020 election special program. Tonight, we are very honored to interview Bill Bruch, State Representative, District 10. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you for having me very much. Appreciate it.
Am I right, Bruch or Bruch?
Are you what?
Your last name.
Oh, it's pronounced Bruch. It's German.
Bruch. Okay.
It's pronounced Bruch. Thank you.
Bruch.
Yeah, you got it right. Thank you.
Okay. So let me introduce Bill. Bill Bruch is a Republican candidate for Legislative District 10 State House. He is a former Lacona Town Council member, and currently he is the Skagit County Republican Party chairman, and he had been Skagit County property and project manager. We are very honored to have you. So my first question is, you are very successful realtor and property manager. So can you, and you have been in the business for more than 30 years. So can you share with us your story of success in business?
Certainly. So yeah, I grew up as a young boy, and my dad was a real estate agent, and he loved real estate and I loved real estate. And I remember as a young boy going out and looking at property and land and putting up signs with him. And he did very well in real estate. He worked with John L. Scott Real Estate Company. And he worked his way up to be a branch manager and then vice president. And then in 1976, the president of John L. Scott Real Estate passed away, John L. Scott Sr. And my dad took over the company and became president of the John L. Scott Real Estate Company. And at the time, it was the largest real estate company in the state. And I was very young at the time, but it was embedded in me, business and business philosophies and pro-business philosophies. And so as a young boy, I've always was interested in real estate. And then I ended up at age 20, I decided to get my real estate license. So I got my license and I started selling real estate, residential and commercial and residential, really enjoyed it, learned a lot. And that turned into, I started to get involved in, I did estate planning. And then I also worked for ABC. I also love boats. And later in life, I worked for ABC Yacht Sales and Charters for a couple of years, learned a lot there as well. And I also was a merchant in La Conner, in the town of La Conner. I owned my own gallery and I love photography. So I had an arts, books, and photography studio gallery and did that for a few years. So lots of years in business. For the last 10 years, I've been a full-time property manager. And I really enjoy property management. It has a lot of real estate and it's business, and it's something that I really enjoy. I have my own property management company, and I have properties that I manage all over Skagit County, including, I don't know if your listeners are familiar with Skagit County, but it's the next county north of Snohomish County. We're about 60 miles north of Seattle, and I manage properties in Anacortes and Mount Vernon and Cedro-Woolley and Burlington and Alger and Fidalgo Island, that part, in La Conner, that part of the state.
Oh, that's wonderful. I have learned you had been an athlete when you were a high school student, and what did that impact you in your career?
So I always loved sports. When I was growing up, I just loved sports, and I had 2 younger brothers, and I have very fond memories, many, many years playing in the backyard and playing football and baseball and soccer and everything. I mean, tetherball and bike racing. And we did everything you could imagine as young boys do. And I think it really taught me the value of hard work and practice. I got to be an all-star in baseball as a pitcher and a center fielder. And I really enjoyed baseball and football. I was a all-star wide receiver in football, and I loved sports. My brother actually really excelled. He became a professional soccer player. My younger brother, Bobby, he's about 18 months younger than me. And because we were always in the backyard, he got really good and he became a professional. And at Newport High School in Bellevue, he won the state championship. And then he actually went to Seattle Pacific. And in 4 years, he started every year and they won 2 national championships, a second and a fourth. So he really excelled. And then he played indoor soccer league. I gravitated towards sailing. I loved sailing. And I always wanted to be in the Olympics. It was a dream of mine. And I ended up being on the U.S. sailing team. My dad was involved in sailing. He was a sailboat racer, and I raced all sorts of different classes of boats and got very good at sailing, and I really enjoyed that. But I was not good enough to be in the Olympics. But I did, in 1989, I was able to win a bronze medal in the Centennial Games, the 100th anniversary of Washington State, the 1989 Centennial Games. I won a bronze medal in the laser class, which is equivalent to the state championship. So I would say value of hard work, discipline, competition, in camaraderie, you know, a lot of friends, working with friends and racing against friends and all of that. So it's skills I learned later on to take into later on in life.
That's wonderful. And what happened and what made you make it a decision to move to Skagit County from Bellevue?
Well,
No,
Bellevue,
Bellevue.
well, you live in Seattle.
Yes.
It's just got so much. When I grew up, there was a lot less traffic, a lot less people, a lot less roads. And I've always loved rural lifestyle and country living. And Skagit's lower cost of housing and all of that. So I moved back about 20 years ago. I've been in Skagit County. I lived in Bow for 4 years, and I've been in Skagit or LaConner 16 years. So rural lifestyle, just slower pace, less traffic, just less people. I enjoy just mountains and water. I still have time to boat here and hike in the mountains, and it's just a very beautiful area of the state.
So at that time, it's a very good market opportunity, right, for the property manager.
Yes, it's very, very busy right now. You know, my heart goes out to renters because the prices are going so high for rentals. It's very, very difficult. We have a housing shortage in the state, and that's one of the things I want to do as a legislator is try to get more housing going because we have about 230,000 units short in the statewide. And we need more housing because supply demand, it's making it very, very expensive for people to live.
Nice. What prepared you into the political arena?
So yeah, that's a good question. I've always been interested in politics. Growing up, I was part of the Young Republicans, East Side Young Republicans, which was in the Seattle, actually more Bellevue area. I remember volunteering for a president candidate, Dole. I remember meeting him in Boeing Field on the tarmac, and that was exciting at the time. Again, I was very young, and I did some volunteering then. But I kind of got out of it, and I was focusing more on my career, but I've always had interest. And then back 2014 and 15, I was in LaConner, and I was very active in LaConner. At that time, I was the property manager in LaConner and just finishing up being a merchant. And I got very interested in the planning commission. I went to those meetings and some of the town council meetings, and I was active on the LaConner Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. I was chairman in 2015. And then in 2016, the mayor of LaConner said, hey, would you like to run for office? There's an opening coming up on the town council. And I thought, I'll think about it. And I thought, well, maybe I'll try. So I decided to run for elected position, and I got elected, and I served there. I really enjoyed my time in the town council. While I was there, I was on the Parks Commission and the Park and Port Committee and the Utilities Committee, and I helped develop some of the LaConner budgets. And I learned a lot through that process. I gained a lot of respect for people in government. And at that time too, for a small part of that time, was also on the Association of Washington Cities Small City Advisory Committee. And so I was able to go to several of the Association Washington meetings around the state and learned a lot there, met a lot of nice people as well there. Then in 2016, I was a big Ted Cruz supporter, and I got recruited to be the Skagit County Ted Cruz chairman, and I ended up being the 2nd Congressional District vice chair for Ted Cruz. And I ended up being a national convention delegate and going to Cleveland, one of only 44 people in the state to do that, and ended up supporting Trump and Pence. So that was an amazing experience, something I never planned on. It just kind of happened. And then after that, I got recruited. I didn't want to do it. I kind of got recruited to be the chairman of the Skagit County Republican Party. It's something I didn't think about, but the outgoing person really needs somebody to replace me or replace him. And he couldn't find anybody. I said, no, why don't you find somebody else? They couldn't. So I decided to do that. And that led me to a lot of different really interesting connections. And I met a lot of our legislators. And I learned how important the party system is. And I learned a lot about politics the last 4 years. I got reelected in 2018. I'm finishing my 2nd term, 4th year. And I learned a tremendous amount during that time. For one thing that I learned is that when any sitting legislator decides to retire or resign or passes away or anything, it's the job of the chairman and the PCOs, the precinct committee officers, to replace a sitting legislator. It's a very, very responsible position. It follows the Washington State Constitution. I had no idea it was it's very important, when you replace a sitting legislator. So what the state constitution says is that the party chairman, working with the Washington State Republican Party bylaws, we work with the PCOs and grassroots volunteers, and we find 3 candidates and we rank them. And then when we get the rankings of those 3 candidates that want to be appointed to the position where the outgoing person is leaving, then we give those 3 names to the governing authorities, and then they make the decision. So the Skagit County Commissioners, the Island County Commissioners, the Snohomish County Council, depending on which district. And we had 5, believe it or not, in 3 years, 5 times in Skagit County it's happened, 3 times Republicans. So the first one, Carolyn Eslick replaced John Koster. A lot of people probably remember John Koster, 16 years, very, very good guy, took a job down in Olympia. After that, Senator Kirk Pearson decided to take a job with the Trump administration. He still works for the Trump administration. And we replaced him with Keith Wagner, who was mayor of Cedar Woolley. Now he's our new legislative district 39 senator. And then last year, Senator Bailey decided to retire, and we replaced her with our current Senator Ron Mazzal. So during those experiences, it's a lot of learning and meeting people. And so I'm able to apply business as kind of a quasi-business and political background to what I'm trying to do now, running for state legislative, hopefully, and being a state representative.
Nice, good job. So what's your biggest accomplishment when you were the city council member of Lacona?
Biggest accomplishment? I would have to say I really enjoyed being on the Association of Washington City Small Advisory Committee. I was elected to do, or I was actually chosen to do that. And that was really enjoyable to me. I won an award for that at that time. And I just enjoy going to meetings. I remember going to meetings in Olympia and Vancouver and all around the state and just learning a lot. And when I went to these meetings, it kept getting embedded how important local politics are. Every government official at the local level, from school board to county commissioner, everything in between is very, very important. And I learned a lot about how hard the work is when I was on the Lacona. I think that's the other thing I would say is I'm a fiscal conservative, and I always thought about term limits and always been about term limits. And I still like term limits, but I changed my view when I was on the Lacona Town Council because I saw how much work it is and how much learning there is. And it takes a lot of times 2 and 3 and 4 years to really understand what you're doing. And as chairman of the party, it took me 2 years to figure out anything. 3rd year, I really understand it. Now I really understand it well. So I'm not opposed to term limits, but I would increase term limits. I always thought 4 years was enough. Now I'm thinking more like 12 or 16-year term limits. I would like to see that across the board and judicial at the federal level as well, but not 4 years or 8 years, but more maybe 12 or 16 years for term limits.
Nice. So what will be your highest priority as a state representative?
Well, I'm very disciplined. I really, people that know me, I throw myself into my work. I really am disciplined. I'm good at multitasking because I wear so many hats. I've had a lot of practice. I'm very good at problem solving. One of the jobs as a property manager is to fix things. And you never know, every day's different. I mean, something can break 4 times in one day in different projects, and your job is to fix things, whether I fix them or I find somebody else to fix them. So I'm good at problem solving. And I think that would be a very good skill to take to the legislatures, how to solve some of the problems we have.
Wonderful. So what will you do as a state representative for the COVID-19 pandemic?
So I've been advocating to get schools open as soon as possible and also to get small businesses up and running. When the pandemic started back in February and March, there was a lot of fear. We had no idea what it was. And I was fully behind Inslee and Trump in shutting down the economy for 2 weeks. Remember, it was 15 days to slow the spread. And we really didn't know. I was in a meeting in my office with a state senator and a county commissioner, and they were talking at the end of February, early March, 200,000 people dead in this state. They didn't know. It was very much pandemic. There was a lot of fear. And the idea to put an emergency declaration in place seemed very prudent and a good idea to make sure the hospitals weren't overwhelmed and we had no idea what we were in for. But within about a month after that, we found out it was nothing as bad as what we thought. And even today, as of right now, less than 3.5% of the beds in the hospitals are COVID related in Washington State. And in Skagit County, it's less than 1% are COVID related. And these people, a lot of the people that I know that cases are going up, but a lot of the people that are diagnosed with COVID have no symptoms or very little symptoms. They're not sick, they're not coughing. So it's not nearly as bad as we thought. And I just don't think these oppressive mandates are good for our economy. We've had suicide increases and drug overdose increases and domestic violence increases and all sorts of bad collateral impacts from these lockdowns and measures. And I think we should open up small businesses. I have friends that own businesses, and it's been very, very difficult to watch them because they're losing their businesses, thousands of businesses across the state. So I would like to see the governor open up the mandates or lessen the mandates and lessen the regulations. For example, restaurants can only be at 50% capacity. And I have restaurant friend owners that are business people that can't make a profit at 50% capacity. They have to be at 80% capacity during their busy times. And if they can't make their payroll. And just as one example. So I think businesses are smart enough, give them the ability to put their own procedures in place. And if a bank says, hey, you have to wear a mask to come in, fine. If a business says, hey, you have to wear a mask, fine. But if a business says, no, you don't have to, then I think we should honor the businesses and allow them to put protocols in place. There's a very successful business in Anacortes called Dakota Creek. They have set up plenty of protocols where if somebody's sick, they take temperatures every day, they send them home, then they send them to a clinic, then they get tested, and then they quarantine for a few days, then they come back, and they have hand washing stations. I think each business can operate very safely, and we should allow the businesses to open.
Nice. So what's your biggest advantage over your opponent in this election?
So my opponent is been very much a proponent of the young sex education beginning in kindergarten. And it's a state mandate that your listeners have probably heard about and read about, and it's on the ballot this year. It's the R90. We're talking about rejecting 90 people that I'm working with. So my opponent has been a big proponent of this. In fact, he is the legislator that made the motion to move this bill out of committee. He thinks it's good, and I think it's bad. I think it's just too young for, very young for children. I think it's dangerous. And if you look at the curriculum, I think it's just way too young to start children indoctrinating them in such early age. So I'm against that. The other thing is my opponent missed many, many votes over 2 years. He missed 48 votes in the 2019 legislative session and 104 votes in the 2020 legislative session. And you shouldn't miss votes if you're a legislator. And if I get elected, I won't miss votes. but he had time to vote for tax increases. My opponent voted for 11 tax increases, including B&O taxes and property taxes, excise, real estate excise taxes, gas taxes. I want to lower taxes. So I want to do the exact opposite, and I want to bring more transparency. My opponent also voted for several title-only bills. I don't know if your audience have heard of title-only bills, but it's also known as a ghost bill. A title-only bill literally is a piece of paper with a title only on it with no legislation, and they pass it, and then at the last minute, weeks or months later, legislation is put in the bill, and then it gets voted on, and oftentimes it becomes a tax increase. I'm against all of that. I think it's bad policy, and we should eliminate title-only bills. So I'm for more transparency and less taxes and less regulations.
You have been the Skagit County Republican Party chairman, and what have you accomplished as the chairman?
As chairman of the party, well, I think I touched on that already. I think the three accomplishments about replacing the sitting Senator Barbara Bailey, and then sitting Senator Kirk Pearson, and then sitting House Rep John Koster were three of the most important things that we did as a county party and as chairman. It took a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of work. You vet candidates, you go through a process. It's very emotional for candidates. You meet a lot of people to select who will be the next representative. So I would say those three instances were probably the most valuable learning experiences.
Nice. And why it's important that you win this election?
Well, we need more balance in our state. In the State House of Representatives, it's 57 votes Democrat to 41 Republican, and there's too much disparity to get anything done. And when the majority party has such a big advantage, they can do anything they want to do. So I am trying to defeat an incumbent Democrat and replace a Democrat seat with a Republican seat, which would get more balance in the legislature. So hopefully we can get maybe 3 or 4 seats and make a difference. And right now it's 57 to 41. There's 49 legislative districts in the state, and each legislative districts have 2 House representatives. So there's 98 total. It would be nice if that was more equal. So maybe after this year, maybe it'd be 54, 44, something closer. And so to bring more balance down there. Yeah.
That's right. So last but not least, can you say something to the voters in the Chinese and Asian community?
Well, I don't speak Chinese, but one of my longtime friends. So I did when I was younger in 1984. I was able to sailboat race to Hawaii from is Victoria to Maui sailboat race, and one of the crew, and I was on the crew there, and I got to steer as well. His name was Anyo, a very good Chinese friend, and I don't have a lot of Chinese friends, but he definitely was one. And I really have fond memories of Anyo, and very good sailor, very good crew member, and just teamwork working with him. Also too, last year, I made a lot of friends in the Chinese community. If you remember the R88, which was the,
yes.
Again, the I-1000, it was voted,
Yes.
that was the it was affirmative action. It was discrimination is what it was. Affirmative. So I teamed up with the Chinese community, a lot of the Chinese community, and we helped get a lot of signatures to get that on the ballot.
That's wonderful.
And I made a lot of friends with the Chinese community and gained a lot of respect, very hard workers. And we got a lot done together working as a team.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I think that's it. And good luck in your election. And let's keep in touch.
Thank you so much for the invitation, and have a great weekend.
Thank you.